Siblings you have and your birth order may influence your health. Younger siblings are less likely to develop allergies and eczema. It could be because by the time they arrive home, the home is already filled with germs brought in by their older siblings' stronger and better immune system. But on the other hand, it says older siblings are more likely to live past the age of 100. Researchers think it has to do with the age of your mom when she gave birth, and that the idea that younger eggs and wombs mean healthier babies. Cynthia?
All right, well, whether you come into this world first, second, third, last, just the mere presence of siblings can shape your personality. Daniel Applegate back with us from Compass Counseling and Consulting. Okay, so siblings, big influence, right?
Oh, yeah. And what we learn early on from our siblings and how we interact with one another can really dictate not just the romantic relationships in our lives later, but also the kinds of friendships we have and just generally how we treat people and what we expect from other people and the way they treat us.
Sure. And so what do we expect? I mean, how do siblings shape those kinds of relationships?
So, I mean, as children, if you have an older child and a younger child, it's really going to depend on how included the younger child feels. If you have a supportive older sibling who brings you in and shares things with you like, oh, this is my music that I like, and these are my movies, and hey, let's go play. That gets trickier if you have like 5, 6, 7 years between siblings, because then you're looking at someone who's 14 and someone who's 7, and I don't know anyone who's 14 who wants to hang out with a 7-year-old, much less your brother or your sister. Yeah. And so that can certainly influence things. And did you fight? You know, did you fight as siblings? And was that fight, was it like really fighting, or was it just like jabbing and sibling rivalry stuff, right? So that can certainly influence us.
What about as adults?
Yeah, as adults, what it's going to do is it can create a divide between us as siblings, but it can also bring us back together. A lot of the times, you're still competing. Even as you get older, you're still competing. And even if those stereotypes aren't true, traits are still traits, and you still know your siblings as you know your siblings. And so like we talked about last week, it's hard for people to give you the benefit of the doubt to grow and to change, right? And so your sibling, your older brother is always going to look at you like, oh, you're my younger brother. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know, I know because I'm the older. And for me, I had an older brother, and it was a tale of two cities because we fought like cats and dogs early on. Mm-hmm. He moved away, he came back later, and now we're the best of friends, and it's one of the greatest relationships I have. We're still brothers, and we still know how to jab at each other,
sure.
But we're old enough now, and we've developed a close enough bond to where that's okay. We can take that.
It's so funny you say that. I have a similar story. I have 2 older brothers, and I went to a Catholic grade school, but I remember asking my teacher if I could give them up for Lent, and that didn't go over so well. But then once they went away to college, I think, and I was in high school at that point, we got a lot closer. Why does that, why is it sometimes that separation that brings siblings closer together? So I've heard that from a lot of, friends and, relatives and things like that, too.
Yeah, I think if there's distance created and then you're all reunited again at some point, then you just genuinely miss each other. You miss having each other around, because at the end of the day, your siblings know the good, the bad, the ugly, and the really, really, really ugly.
Yeah.
And they still love you, hopefully. Right? And so you don't really have that kind of relationship with anybody else in the world who's going to accept you unconditionally. Now, that's in healthy families, and so we can get into like dysfunctional stuff later, but I mean, that's really the gist of it, is like we talked about before. You want people to bear witness to your life, and your siblings do that day in and day out.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about ways to maintain a sibling relationship, because as we mentioned, oftentimes siblings grow up, maybe move away, and that can be good in some respects. It can also be really difficult to maintain a relationship when that happens.
It does. It gets really hard. If you have 3 or 4 siblings and you're all in different parts of the country, it gets really, really hard to even get together at holidays once everybody has jobs and families and things like that to tend to themselves. Social media makes it a lot easier. But again, that's sort of on a superficial level to stay connected to everybody, but at least it's some sort of lifeline. You have some sort of lifeline. If you're in California and your sibling is in Illinois, you can at least keep up on the important events, right? If it's at all feasible, I would really suggest every year trying to find a way to get together, either orchestrate a family reunion, switch off on going to each other's places for a week in the summer. I mean, whatever you can do. That's if that relationship is important to you, and my hope is that it would be, but it's hard, but there are ways that you can navigate that.
What about if that relationship is important to you, but it's a negative one? I mean, is there And I feel like this is such a hard, maybe a hard question to answer, but at what point do you need to think about maybe cutting ties with a sibling who is just a very negative influence on your life?
Yeah, and I mean, that's not something that's just going to happen. That's something that's going to be years and years and years in the making, just years of behavior, years of manipulation, years of making you feel like a horrible person. Maybe you have a parent who does that, and those siblings sort of take the parent's side, and you feel alone. I mean, I've worked with clients who have absolutely just had to say, my family is dead to me. I have no family. My siblings are horrible to me. My parents are manipulative or abusive. I'm on my own. And that's sad when that happens, but that's a very real possibility, you know, and so it really takes a healthy person who wants to invest in themselves and has the self-worth to want to stand up for themselves and say, you know what, I'm going to weed these negative people out of my life, whether they're friends, lovers, or whatever. And if it's family, that hurts a lot. I mean, that is truly a death, and it's a grieving process, like a lot of things are. But sometimes you have to do it just for your own sanity.
I want to mention, too, that sometimes professional help is a good avenue to go down if that's the way you're feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah, counseling is a great place to start with that. I mean, because there's so much that's going to come up with guilt and shame just from how the people have made you feel, much less deciding to walk away, right? So,
difficult decisions. All right, Danny, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.